The stars burned cold and distant as Admiral Kale watched his fleet die. Through the viewing screen of his command ship, he could see the twisted metal remains of what had once been the pride of the Galactic Federation. 300 ships had entered this system. Now only 50 remained, and even those were badly damaged. "Admiral, the Crystal Hope is gone," reported his communications officer, her voice barely a whisper. The Nexari officer's crystalline body flickered with dim, sad colors. "That's the last of the Nexari heavy cruisers." Kyle closed his eyes and felt the weight of failure crush down on him like a physical thing. The Luminari were beings of pure energy, and he could feel his light dimming with each lost ship, each dead crew member. Around him, the bridge crew worked quietly, their movements slow and careful like people at a funeral. The enemy was unlike anything the Federation had ever faced. The Vorthak swarm moved like a living nightmare through space. Their ships were not built but grown, black and twisted things that pulsed with alien life. They fought with no regard for their own survival, throwing themselves at Federation ships in waves that never seemed to end. "Sir, we're receiving another distress call from the Hydros colony on Reef 7, said Commander Neth, his aquatic form rippling with stress. The population was 12 million. Was? Kyle asked, though he already knew the answer. The Vorthak landed 6 hours ago. We're detecting no life signs now. 12 million dead. Just like the colony on Prima 5, just like the research station at Deep Space 7. The Vorthak did not take prisoners. They did not negotiate. They simply consumed everything in their path, adding the biological matter to their ever-growing swarm. Kale moved to the star chart, his energy form casting a soft glow on the holographic display. Red markers showed Vorthak positions. They had taken 3 entire sectors in less than a month. At this rate, they would reach the core worlds within 6 months. Have we heard anything from the reinforcement requests? He asked. His tactical officer, a young luminary named Bright Dawn, flickered nervously. We've received responses from 17 species, sir, but most can only offer small patrol ships or medical supplies. The Zentari are sending a battle group, but it won't arrive for 3 weeks. 3 weeks. They would all be dead in 3 weeks. Kale stared at the display, watching the red markers slowly advance toward the Federation's inner systems. Each marker represented millions of lives that would be snuffed out if they failed here. The peaceful alliance that had brought prosperity to the galaxy for over 1,000 years was dying, and he was powerless to stop it. "Sir," called the communications officer, "we're receiving a response to our general distress call. It's from an unknown species." "Put it through." The main screen flickered, and static filled the bridge. Then a voice came through, speaking in accented galactic standard. "This is Captain Lee Do-hyun of the Terran Defense Force. We received your call for help. We're preparing a fleet and will be there as soon as possible." The bridge fell silent. Kyle had never heard of Terrans before. "Where are they from?" he asked his science officer. The Nexari scientist's crystals chimed softly as he accessed the Federation database. "Unknown, sir. The transmission came from a system in the Outer Rim. Coordinates—" He paused, his crystals flashing in confusion. "Sir, that system isn't in our database. It's in what we've classified as unexplored space." "How many ships are they sending?" Kyle asked. Static crackled for a moment before the voice came back. "We'll have approximately 50 vessels ready for deployment. Is there anything specific we should know about the enemy?" 50 ships. Kyle felt his energy dim further. Even if these Terrans were as advanced as the Federation's best, 50 ships would barely make a difference, but he was desperate. "The enemy is called the Vorthak Swarm," Kale transmitted back. "They're a hive-minded species with biological ships. They show no mercy and take no prisoners. Any assistance would be greatly appreciated." Understood. Captain Lee out. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in uncomfortable silence. Finally, Commander Neth spoke. "Sir, should we tell them about the casualties? The Vorthak have destroyed over 200 Federation ships in the past month." Kale considered this. These Terrans were volunteers, coming to help strangers. They deserved to know what they were flying into. But if he told them the truth, would they still come? "Send them our tactical reports," he decided. "Everything we know about Vorthak capabilities and our defensive positions. If they're going to help us, they need to understand what they're facing." Hours passed. The Federation fleet held its position, at the edge of the Kepler system, the last major defensive line before the core worlds. Long-range sensors showed the Vorthak swarm massing just 2 systems away. Soon, they would come. And when they did, the remaining Federation ships would make their final stand. Kale spent the time reviewing personnel files. So many good officers lost. So many promising young beings who would never see their home worlds again. The Hydro's Admiral Coral Deep had been his friend for 50 years. Gone now, along with her entire battle group. "Admiral?" called the communications officer. "The Terrans are asking for our fleet compositions and defensive strategies. They also want to know about our weapons technology and shield capabilities." Kale nodded. "Send them everything. If they're going to fight beside us, they need to know how our equipment works." The response came quickly. "Thank you for the information. We've studied your tactical reports. Is it acceptable if we use different fighting methods than what you're used to?" What a strange question. "Tell them they're free to use whatever tactics they think will be effective." More hours passed. The bridge crew worked quietly, making repairs where possible and preparing for what everyone knew would be their final battle. Some of the younger officers whispered prayers to their various gods. Others wrote final messages to their families. Then, the long-range sensors picked up something new. "Admiral," called the sensor operator, "I'm detecting ships approaching from the direction of Terran space. 50 contacts, just as they promised." Kyle felt a small flicker of hope. Even if these ships couldn't change the outcome, at least they wouldn't die alone. "Put them on screen when they're in visual range." The Terran ships appeared gradually on the main viewer. They were smaller than Federation vessels, with clean lines and a metallic gray color. Nothing impressive, but they moved with precision. Through space. Their formation was tight and disciplined. "Incoming transmission from the Terran fleet," announced the communications officer. "Admiral Kyle, this is Captain Lee Do-hyun. We're ready to assist in the defense of this system. Where would you like us to position our ships?" Kyle studied the tactical display. The Terrans had 50 ships against what sensors estimated was a Vorthak force of over 500. Mathematics was not kind to their chances. "Captain Lee, take position on our left flank. I should warn you, we're facing overwhelming odds. The Vorthak outnumber us 10 to 1. There was a pause before the response came. When Captain Lee spoke again, there was something in his voice that Kale couldn't identify. Not fear. Something else. "Admiral, with respect, you're thinking about this wrong. They don't outnumber us 10 to 1. Another pause. We outnumber each of them. Kale stared at the screen, confused by the statement. Before he could respond, his sensor operator called out in alarm. "Sir, the Vorthak swarm is entering the system. Multiple contacts, too many to count accurately. They'll be in weapons range in 6 hours." The final battle was about to begin. The Federation diplomatic ship Harmony moved slowly through the Sol system, its sensors taking careful readings of everything around it. Ambassador Velith stood on the bridge, her luminary form glowing with nervous energy. This was her first time visiting an unknown species, and the responsibility felt heavy. "Ambassador," called the ship's captain, "we're receiving a transmission from the third planet. They're directing us to coordinates near their moon." Their moon? Velith found this odd. Most civilized species built their space stations near their home planets, not around moons. "Are you certain?" "Yes, ma'am. They're calling it Luna Station. Should I comply with their instructions?" Velith nodded. Everything about these Terrans seemed unusual. Their initial response to the Federation's distress call had been immediate and decisive. Most species took weeks to debate military action, especially for strangers. But the Terrans had simply said they were coming and began preparing their fleet. As the Harmony approached Luna Station, Velith got her first look at Terran architecture. The station was massive but functional, built from metal and composites rather than the crystalline structures preferred by most advanced species. Ships moved in and out of docking bays with military precision. "Impressive," murmured her aide, Commander Soft Rain. "Look at the traffic control. Every ship knows exactly where to go." Velith watched the display screen as dozens of Terran vessels moved through space around the station. There was no wasted motion, no confusion. Each ship followed exact paths that somehow avoided collisions, despite the heavy traffic. The docking process was smooth and efficient. Within minutes, the Harmony was secured in a bay clearly designed for foreign vessels. The Terrans had prepared for their arrival with typical attention to detail. A delegation of 3 Terrans waited in the docking bay. The leader was a tall male with dark hair and calm eyes. His uniform was simple but well-made, with insignia that suggested high rank. The other 2 were a female with short hair and an older male whose posture spoke of military experience. "Welcome to Luna Station," said the leader as Velith stepped off her ship. "I'm Admiral Park Ji-ho, commander of Earth's Defense Fleet. This is General Kim Min-ho and Dr. Yoon Nari, our chief xenobiologist." Velith was struck by how similar Terrans looked to several other humanoid species in the Federation. 2 arms, 2 legs, bilateral symmetry. But there was something different about them, something in the way they moved and carried themselves. "Thank you for receiving us, Admiral Park," Velith replied, letting her natural glow brighten in a gesture of respect. "I'm Ambassador Velith of the Luminary. We're grateful for your offer of assistance." Admiral Park led them through the station's corridors. Velith noticed immediately how different it felt from Federation stations. The lighting was harsh and white, rather than the soft, varied colors most species preferred. The corridors were wide and straight, clearly designed for rapid movement of large groups. "Tell us about your enemy," said General Kim as they walked. His tone was direct, without the flowery language common in Federation diplomacy. Dr. Yoon spoke up before Velith could answer. "I've been studying the reports you sent. The Vorthak are fascinating from a biological standpoint. A true hive mind, with genetic memory passed through pheromone markers." Velith blinked in surprise. The doctor spoke about the terrifying swarm as if they were an interesting research subject rather than galaxy-threatening monsters. They reached a conference room, where holographic displays showed the current tactical situation. The red markers representing Vorthak forces seemed to pulse with menace as they advanced toward Federation space. "Your reports say they've destroyed over 200 Federation ships," said Admiral Park, studying the display. "What kind of casualties are we looking at?" "The Vorthak take no prisoners," Velith explained. "Every encounter results in total loss of life for the defending forces. We estimate over 50 million Federation citizens have died in the past month." She expected some reaction to this news. Horror, fear, sadness. Instead, the three Terrans simply nodded and continued studying the tactical data. "What's the average crew size on your ships?" asked General Kim. "Approximately 800 for a heavy cruiser, 300 for a destroyer," Velith answered. Dr. Yoon made notes on a small device. "So we're looking at roughly 160,000 military casualties plus 50 million civilians. The psychological impact on your population must be severe." Again, that clinical tone. Velith was beginning to understand that Terrans approached warfare very differently than Federation species. "Admiral," she said carefully, "I should explain something about the Federation. We've been at peace for over 800 years. The last major conflict was a border dispute resolved through negotiation. Most of our species have no experience with large-scale combat." Admiral Park looked up from the display. "What about your military training?" "Our defense forces are primarily for rescue operations and dealing with pirates or smugglers. Nothing like what we're facing now." The three Terrans exchanged glances. Velith caught something in their expressions that made her nervous. "Admiral Park, may I ask about Earth's military history?" This time, the glances the Terrans shared were longer. Finally, Dr. Yoon spoke. "Ambassador, how much do you want to know?" "Everything that might be relevant to our current situation." Dr. Yoon activated a holographic display that showed Earth's continents. "Human civilization has been in almost constant warfare for our entire recorded history. We've fought over territory, resources, religion, ideology, and sometimes just because we didn't like each other." The display shifted to show historical battle scenes. Velith watched in growing horror as armies of millions clashed across continents. "This is from our 20th century," Dr. Yoon continued. "We call it World War II. The death toll was approximately 75 million people." Velith's energy form flickered with shock. 75 million in one war. "That was just the beginning," said General Kim grimly. "We developed weapons that could destroy entire cities in seconds. We built machines of war that could cross oceans and rain death from the sky." Admiral Park activated another display. "This is our current doctrine for fleet engagement. We call it combined arms warfare. We coordinate space, air, land, and sea forces simultaneously while accounting for acceptable casualty rates." "Acceptable casualty rates?" Velith whispered. "We plan for losing 30% of our forces in a major engagement," Admiral Park explained matter-of-factly. "Sometimes more, depending on the strategic importance of the objective." Velith felt physically ill. The Federation considered a single ship loss to be a tragedy requiring weeks of investigation and grief counseling for the survivors. "I need to understand something," she said slowly. "When you offered to help us fight the Vorthak, you knew you might lose a significant portion of your fleet?" "Of course," said Admiral Park. "That's what war means." Dr. Yoon leaned forward. "Ambassador, May I ask about your homeworld? What's the environment like? Grateful for a change of subject, Velith brightened. Luminar is beautiful. Perfect climate, no dangerous weather, no predators. We evolved in harmony with our environment. Interesting. Dr. Yoon made more notes. Earth is what we call a class. 12 Deathworld. Deathworld? Violent weather systems, volcanic activity, earthquakes, tsunamis, hurricanes. Over 99% of all species that ever lived on Earth are now extinct. Our ancestors survived by becoming the most dangerous predators on the planet. Velith stared at the Terrans with new understanding. They weren't offering to help despite the danger. They were offering to help because they were the danger. The Vorthak won't negotiate, she said weakly. They'll fight to the death. General, Kim smiled, and for the first time, Velith saw something predatory in the expression. Good, he said. So will we. As the meeting continued, Velith began to realize that the Federation hadn't just found allies. They had found something far more terrifying than the Vorthak could ever be. They had found humans. Admiral Kale watched the tactical display as the human fleet took position on the Federation's left flank. 50 ships against what sensors now confirmed was a Vorthak force of over 600 vessels. The mathematics were simple and brutal. Admiral called his communications officer. Captain Lee is requesting permission to conduct a demonstration for our tactical staff. What kind of demonstration? He says they want to show us how humans fight, using the derelict ship at coordinates 77 Alpha. Kale looked at the coordinates. A Federation cruiser had been damaged in the last skirmish and abandoned. The crew had been evacuated, but the ship was still mostly intact. Very well. Patch me through to all ship commanders. They should see this. The human ship Soul's Pride moved toward the derelict with smooth precision. It was smaller than most Federation vessels, but Kale could see weapon ports and sensor arrays that spoke of serious military design. Admiral Kyle, came Captain Lee's voice over the comm. We're going to demonstrate a boarding action. Colonel Choi Hana will lead a team to secure the bridge of the derelict ship. Boarding actions were rare in Federation warfare. Most ships surrendered or were destroyed rather than boarded. It was considered too dangerous and unpredictable. The human ship matched velocity with the derelict and extended what looked like a flexible docking tube. Through the Federation's sensors, Kale could see armored figures moving through the connection. How many soldiers are they sending? Asked Commander Neth. Sensors show 12 human soldiers, replied the tactical officer. Armed with what appear to be projectile weapons and some kind of explosive devices. 12 soldiers to clear an entire ship. Kale shook his head. Humans clearly didn't understand the scope of such an operation. The boarding party spread through the ship with surprising speed. Kale watched their progress on the tactical display as they moved through corridor after corridor, checking every room and compartment. Look at their movement pattern, observed Commander Bright Dawn. They're not clearing the ship randomly. They're following optimal paths to control key systems. It was true. The humans moved with purpose, securing engineering, communications, and weapons systems in sequence. Their teamwork was flawless, each soldier knowing exactly where to go without apparent communication. Sir, called the sensor operator. I'm detecting small explosive charges being placed throughout the ship. Explosive charges? Kale was confused. Why would they destroy what they're trying to capture? The answer came when the human team reached the bridge. Instead of trying to restart the ship's systems, they simply placed more charges and retreated to their own vessel. All Federation vessels, please move to minimum safe distance, came Colonel Choi's voice. The charges detonated in sequence, and the derelict ship broke apart in a controlled pattern. Each explosion was precisely placed to cause maximum structural damage while avoiding the ship's power core. "Why did they destroy it?" Cale asked over the comm. "Admiral," replied Colonel Choi, "we weren't trying to capture the ship. We were showing you how quickly we can neutralize enemy vessels from the inside. Total time from boarding to destruction, 14 minutes. 14 minutes to completely destroy a ship from within." Cale felt a chill run through his energy form. "Colonel, that was impressive, but in actual combat, you'd be facing armed resistance." "Yes, sir. Would you like us to demonstrate combat boarding procedures?" Before Cale could answer, long-range sensors detected movement from the Vorthak fleet. "Admiral," called his sensor operator, "the Vorthak are advancing. They'll be in weapons. Range in 4 hours." Cale studied the tactical display. The alien swarm moved like a dark cloud across space, their bioships pulsing with malevolent life. Even at this distance, he could feel the wrongness of them. "All ships, battle stations," he ordered. "Prepare for defensive action." The Federation fleet moved into standard defensive formation, ships arranged in neat lines with overlapping fields of fire. It was textbook tactics, proven over centuries of theoretical study. The human fleet did something entirely different. Their ships spread out in what looked like random positions, some moving ahead of the main line, others falling back. There was no apparent pattern to their deployment. "Captain Lee," Kyle called, "your formation seems unconventional." "Yes, sir. We don't fight in lines. Too easy for the enemy to predict our movements and concentrate fire. But how do you coordinate your attacks without proper formation?" "We use something called chaos theory, Admiral. Controlled randomness that looks like disorder but actually follows complex mathematical patterns. The enemy can't predict what we'll do, because we're always adapting." Kyle didn't understand, but there was no time to ask for clarification. The Vorthak fleet was accelerating, their bioships stretching into attack formation like a massive predatory creature extending its claws. "All ships, weapons free," Cale ordered. "Engage at maximum range." The Federation ships opened fire with their energy weapons, sending streams of coherent light across space toward the advancing swarm. The Vorthak ships absorbed some hits and dodged others, their organic hulls healing minor damage almost instantly. The human ships held their fire. "Captain Lee, why aren't your ships engaging?" "Waiting for optimal range, Admiral." The Vorthak closed to half the distance before the human weapons opened fire. But when they did, the effect was devastating. Instead of energy beams, the human ships fired solid projectiles at incredible velocity. The kinetic rounds punched through Vorthak bioarmor like it was paper. Ships that had shrugged off Federation energy weapons were torn apart by human railgun rounds. "How are they getting such penetration?" asked Commander Neth in amazement. "Kinetic energy weapons," explained Captain Lee over the comm. "Simple physics. Mass times velocity equals dead enemy." But the real shock came when the Vorthak ships got close enough for boarding range. Instead of trying to avoid contact like Federation ships would, several human vessels deliberately rammed Vorthak ships. "Soul's pride to all ships," came Captain Oh Seung-jae's voice. "My engines are down and main guns are offline, switching to ramming speed." Kyle watched in horror as the human ship accelerated directly toward a massive Vorthak biocruiser. The collision should have destroyed both vessels. Instead, the human ship's reinforced hull punched through the alien vessel like a spear, emerging from the other side as the Vorthak ship split apart around it. "Soul's pride to fleet," Captain O reported calmly. Target neutralized. Requesting damage control teams. Captain, "Oh," Kale called. "That was incredibly dangerous. You could have been killed." "Yes, sir. But the math worked out. Their ship was bigger but less dense. Conservation of momentum was in our favor. They used their ship as a weapon. The concept was so alien to Federation thinking that Kale could barely process it. The battle continued for 3 hours. When it was over, the Federation had lost 8 ships, while the humans had lost only 2. But more than half the human fleet was damaged, some barely holding together. "Captain Lee," Kyle said as the surviving ships regrouped, "your losses were acceptable to you?" There was a pause before Lee responded. "Admiral, we didn't lose those ships. We invested them. 2 ships for 47 enemy vessels destroyed is excellent mathematics." Kale realized that humans didn't think about warfare the same way as other species. They didn't see ships and lives as things to be preserved at all costs. They saw them as resources to be spent wisely in pursuit of victory. It was a terrifying perspective, but as he looked at the tactical display, showing the scattered remains of the Vorthak attack fleet, he had to admit it was effective. "Captain Lee," he said finally, "welcome to the Federation Defense Force." "Thank you, Admiral. When do we attack their main fleet?" Attack? Kyle had been thinking about defense, about holding the line until reinforcements arrived. But as he watched, the human ships already beginning repairs and reorganization, he realized that these new allies weren't interested in just defending. They were planning to win. The joint Human Federation fleet approached the Kepler system's inner planets, where the main Vorthak force waited. Admiral Kyle had never seen anything like it. The alien swarm filled space like a living nightmare, thousands of bioships moving, in patterns that hurt to look at. "Admiral," reported his sensor operator, "I count over 1,500 Vorthak vessels. They've established defensive positions around all 3 inner planets." Kale studied the tactical display with growing dread. Even with human reinforcements, they were outnumbered 3-1. Standard Federation doctrine called for retreat when facing such odds. "Captain Lee," he called to the human fleet commander, "perhaps we should fall back and wait for additional reinforcements." "Negative, Admiral. Every day we wait, more civilians die. We're going in." The human ships began accelerating toward the inner system, while the Federation vessels followed more cautiously. Kale watched as the humans spread into their chaotic formation patterns, individual ships moving in seemingly random directions. "Sir," called Commander Bright Dawn, "the humans are requesting orbital bombardment coordinates for the planet surfaces." "Orbital bombardment?" Kyle was shocked. "There might be survivors down there." "Admiral Kale," came Captain Lee's voice, "our sensors show no Federation life signs on any of the 3 planets. The Vorthak have consumed everything, but their ground installations are still active and supporting their fleet." Kale reluctantly provided the coordinates. He was still learning to think like humans, to see warfare as a system of interconnected targets rather than individual ship duels. The Vorthak fleet moved to intercept, their bioships flowing through space like a dark tide. At the front came their heavy assault vessels, massive creatures the size of small moons with weapons that could crack planetary surfaces. "Federation fleet, assume defensive formation Gamma," Kale ordered, following doctrine that had served for centuries. The human response was typically unconventional. "All Terran vessels, initiate aggressive defense pattern 7. Lieutenant Commander Bay, take your fighters in for the first run." Kale watched in amazement as human fighter craft launched from their carriers, but instead of staying in protective formations, the small ships accelerated directly toward the massive Vorthak fleet. Captain Lee, those fighters won't survive a direct assault on the enemy's main force. Admiral, you're thinking defensively. Watch and learn. Lieutenant Commander Bei Sujin led her fighter squadron in what looked like a suicide run straight at the largest Vorthak bioship. The alien vessel's defensive systems opened fire, filling space with energy bursts and bioplasma. But the human fighters didn't try to avoid the fire. Instead, they flew through it, their small size and incredible speed making them nearly impossible to hit. As they closed with the enemy ship, each fighter released a single torpedo before pulling away in sharp turns that would have killed most alien pilots. The torpedoes were small, barely visible on sensors. Kale expected them to cause minimal damage to such a massive target. He was wrong. The weapons punched through the bioship's outer hull and detonated inside its organic structure. The creature ship convulsed as explosions tore through its vital systems, and within minutes the massive vessel was dead in space. How? Kale whispered. Penetrating warheads with delayed fusing, Captain Lee explained. We studied your bioship reports. Most alien vessels have thick outer armor but softer interiors. Our torpedoes are designed to get inside before exploding. Human fighters regrouped and immediately began another attack run on a different target. Kale realized they weren't performing desperate suicide attacks. This was standard human fighter doctrine. Admiral, called his communications officer, the humans are requesting fire support for their ground assault operations. Ground assault? Kale looked at his tactical display. What ground assault? The answer came as human dropships launched from their fleet, heading directly for the planetary surfaces below. While the space battle raged above, the humans were simultaneously launching ground operations. Captain Lee, this is incredibly risky. You're fighting on multiple fronts simultaneously. Yes, sir. We call it combined arms warfare. Space, air, and ground operations all coordinated for maximum effect. Kale watched in fascination as human ground forces landed on the first planet while their fleet engaged the Vorthak in orbit. Instead of the careful, methodical approach Federation forces would use, the humans attacked everything at once. Sir, reported Commander Neth. I'm receiving reports from the human ground forces. Sergeant Nam Ji-hoon's unit has secured what appears to be a Vorthak biological weapons facility. How are they communicating from the surface? Vorthak interference should block all transmissions. The humans are using something called hardened military communication systems, sir. Apparently, they designed their equipment to work in hostile environments. Of course they did. Kale was beginning to understand that humans planned for the worst possible conditions as a matter of routine. The space battle intensified as more Vorthak ships moved to engage the Federation fleet. But something strange was happening. The alien bioships seemed confused, their formations breaking apart as they tried to respond to threats from multiple directions. Admiral, observed Commander Bright Dawn, the Vorthak can't coordinate their response. They're used to fighting single-front battles. It was true. The hive mind that made the Vorthak so effective in simple combat situations was actually working against them now. They couldn't adapt to the complexity of human multidimensional warfare. A massive explosion on the second planet's surface lit up the tactical display. What was that? Kyle asked. Sergeant Nam's team found a Vorthak bioweapon. Stockpile, reported the communications officer. They've turned the aliens' own weapons against them. Kale stared at the display. The humans had been on the ground for less than 2 hours and were already using captured enemy weapons. How are your ground forces learning to operate? Alien technology so quickly? Admiral, came a new voice over the comm. "This is Sergeant Nam Jihoon. These bioweapons aren't that different from equipment we use in hostile environments on Earth. The basic principles are the same." "The basic principles of biological warfare are the same?" There was a pause. "Sir, everything is a weapon if you use it right. The Vorthak just happened to make theirs obvious." The ground assault continued while the space battle raged overhead. Human forces secured Vorthak installations with frightening efficiency, turning each captured position into a fire base for the next assault. But the real shock came when Kale realized what the humans were actually doing. They weren't just attacking, randomly. Every target they hit was carefully chosen to maximize damage to the Vorthak's ability to fight. "Captain Lee," he called, "your ground operations are targeting biological support systems." "Yes, sir." "The Vorthak bioships need constant biological material to maintain themselves. We're cutting off their supply lines." In space, the effect was already becoming visible. Vorthak ships that had been healing battle damage were now showing signs of biological failure. Their organic hulls were deteriorating without the resources they needed for repair. "Sir," called the tactical officer, "the Vorthak fleet is beginning to withdraw from the outer positions." Kale couldn't believe it. The aliens were retreating. In less than 6 hours, the humans had turned what should have been a massacre into a Federation victory. "All Federation ships pursue and engage," he ordered. "Don't let them regroup." "Admiral," came Captain Lee's voice, "might I suggest a different approach?" "What do you have in mind, Captain?" "Let them run. They'll report back to their main fleet about human combat capabilities. Fear is a weapon too, and scared enemies make mistakes." Kyle considered this. Federation doctrine called for pressing every advantage, pursuing defeated enemies until they surrendered. But humans seemed to think in longer terms, using psychological warfare as naturally as they used kinetic weapons. "Very well, Captain. We'll let them go." As the surviving Vorthak ships fled the system, Kyle reviewed the battle reports. The Federation had lost 12 ships. The humans had lost 7. But the Vorthak had lost over 400 vessels and all their ground installations. "Captain Lee," he said finally, "I'm beginning to understand why you weren't worried about being outnumbered." "Numbers matter, Admiral, but tactics matter more. And humans have been perfecting the art of warfare for a very long time." Looking at the tactical display showing the scattered remains of what had been the largest Vorthak fleet ever assembled, Kale had to agree. The galaxy was about to learn that humans didn't just fight wars, they ended them. The victory celebration aboard the Federation flagship felt strange to Admiral Kale. Around him, officers from dozen species shared food and drink, their relief at surviving the battle obvious in every gesture. But the human representatives sat, quietly, studying tactical reports and planning next moves. "Admiral Kale," called Ambassador Velith as she approached his position, "the Federation Council wishes to thank the human forces for their assistance. We'd like to discuss future cooperation." Kyle nodded toward the human delegation. "You should speak with Commander Yunjiwoo. She's their military ethics officer." Velith's energy form flickered with confusion. "Military ethics officer? What does that mean?" "I'm not entirely sure," Kale admitted. "But apparently humans have officers whose job is to make sure their military follows certain rules during combat." The concept was alien to most Federation species. The idea that a species capable of such devastating warfare would need rules to limit their own violence seemed contradictory. Ambassador Velith approached the human delegation with several other Federation representatives. Commander Yun sat with Dr. Shin Yunji, the human military psychologist, reviewing reports from the recent battle. Commander Yun, Velith began, we wanted to discuss the engagement protocols for future operations. Commander Yun looked up from her datapad. Of course. Ambassador, what specific aspects concern you? Well, Velith hesitated, we noticed that human forces used unconventional methods during the battle. Some of our officers found them disturbing. Dr. Shin leaned forward. Could you be more specific? Which actions concerned your people? The orbital bombardment of planetary surfaces, the use of captured enemy weapons, the ramming attacks, listed Commander Neth, who had joined the conversation. These tactics seem extreme. Commander Yun nodded thoughtfully. I understand your concern. Perhaps we should explain something about human military doctrine. We operate under what we call the Geneva Conventions. Geneva Conventions? Asked Velith. Rules of war, Dr. Shin explained. They're international laws that govern how humans conduct military operations. They're designed to limit unnecessary suffering and protect non-combatants. The alien delegates exchanged glances. Finally, Commander Bright Dawn spoke up. You have laws that limit how you fight wars? Extensive laws, confirmed Commander Yun. We're prohibited from targeting civilians, using certain types of weapons, and mistreating prisoners. Every human military officer studies these rules extensively. But, Velith said slowly, if you have rules limiting your violence, that implies you're capable of much worse than what we've seen. The silence that followed was uncomfortable. Finally, Dr. Shin spoke. Ambassador, would you like the complete picture of human military capabilities? Or would you prefer to maintain some illusions about our nature? Kale felt his energy dim. Perhaps we should know the truth. Dr. Shin activated a holographic display showing Earth's continents. This is our home world as it appeared in the year 1945 of our calendar. We'd just finished a global conflict that lasted 6 years and killed approximately 75 million people. The display shifted to show images of destroyed cities. We ended that war by using weapons that could destroy entire population centers in seconds. Each weapon had the explosive power of 20,000 tons of conventional explosives. Velith's form flickered with shock. 20,000 tons? In a single weapon? Those were small by our current standards, Commander Yun said quietly. Modern human weapons can destroy areas the size of small countries. Why would you build such things? Whispered Commander Neth. Because we were afraid someone else would build them first, Dr. Shin replied. Humans have a saying, if you want peace, prepare for war. The display changed again, showing human soldiers in various conflicts throughout history. The Geneva Conventions exist because we learned what we were capable of when we removed all limits, Commander Yun explained. Chemical weapons that dissolve living tissue, biological weapons that target specific genetic markers, tactics designed to break enemy morale through terror. Admiral Kale forced himself to ask the question everyone was thinking. What did you do that was so terrible you had to create laws against it? Dr. Shin met his gaze steadily. Everything, Admiral. We did everything. We poisoned water supplies, bombed hospitals, used prisoners for medical experiments, and created weapons designed specifically to cause maximum suffering rather than quick death. The Federation delegates sat in stunned silence. Finally, Velith spoke. But you stopped. You created these conventions to prevent such things. Yes, Commander Yun confirmed. We learned that winning a war isn't worth becoming monsters. The Geneva Conventions ensure that human military forces fight efficiently but with honor. Honor, repeated Commander Bright Dawn. You speak of honor while describing the most terrible warfare imaginable. That's exactly why we speak of honor, Dr. Shin said, because we know what happens when honor is abandoned. The conventions aren't just laws, they're reminders of what we choose not to be. Commander Neth leaned forward. But in the recent battle, you used orbital bombardment on planetary surfaces. How is that different from the weapons you've described? The planets were already dead, Commander Yun explained. Our sensors confirmed no Federation life signs before we fired. We were targeting military installations, not civilians. And the ramming attacks? Pressed Velith. Tactical decisions made by individual commanders when their ships were too damaged. To continue fighting effectively, better to ensure their sacrifice counts than to simply be destroyed uselessly. Kale realized something that made his energy form dim even further. You've been holding back, haven't you? In our battles against the Vorthak, you haven't been using your full military capabilities. Commander Yun nodded. The Geneva Conventions require us to use no more force than necessary to achieve military objectives. The Vorthak are clearly hostile and genocidal, but we still follow our rules of engagement. What would change if you stopped following those rules? Asked Dr. Bright Dawn. The two humans exchanged glances. Dr. Shin spoke carefully. The war would end much faster. But we would become something we've spent centuries learning not to be. I don't understand, said Velith. You're fighting to save Federation worlds from complete destruction. Surely that justifies using maximum force. Ambassador, Commander Yun said gently. The moment we decide that the ends justify any means is the moment we become as monstrous as our enemies. The Geneva Conventions protect the galaxy from us as much as they protect our enemies from unnecessary suffering. The room fell quiet as the implications sank in. These humans, who had already proven themselves capable of devastating warfare, were operating under self-imposed restrictions. Commander, Kale said finally, may I ask what your military capabilities would be without these conventions? Dr. Shin was quiet for a long moment. Admiral, we could end this war in less than a week. We could sterilize every Vorthak world, destroy their entire species, and ensure they never threaten anyone again. But we won't, Commander Yun added firmly. Because victory without honor isn't victory at all. It's just another form of monstrosity. Ambassador, Velith's energy form pulsed with a mixture of relief and terror. So you're choosing to fight a longer, more difficult war to preserve your principles? Yes, both humans said simultaneously. Kale looked around the room at the Federation delegates, seeing his own thoughts reflected in their expressions. They had asked for help from these humans, not understanding what they were truly asking for. Now he realized they hadn't just found powerful allies. They had found a species that had looked into the abyss of unlimited warfare and chosen to step back from it. The humans weren't just fighting the Vorthak, they were fighting their own capacity for total destruction, winning that battle every day through conscious choice. Commander Yun, Kyle said finally, the Federation is honored to fight beside you. Thank you, Admiral. We'll do our best to end this war quickly while keeping our souls intact. As the meeting ended, Kale couldn't shake the feeling that the galaxy had just been introduced to something unprecedented. A species of warriors who had learned to fear their own power enough to control it. It was perhaps the most terrifying and reassuring thing he had ever encountered. Intelligence data streamed across the holographic displays in the war room aboard the Federation flagship. After weeks of analysis, they had finally located the source of the Vorthak swarm, a heavily fortified world deep in enemy territory where the Queen Mother coordinated the hive mind. "The planet is designated Hive Prime," reported the Nexari intelligence officer, his crystals chiming softly as he processed data. "It's protected by over 2,000 bioships and planetary defense, systems we can't even classify." Admiral Kyle studied the readings with growing despair. The world itself looked like a nightmare, covered in organic structures that pulsed with alien life. Massive defense platforms grew from the planet's surface like metallic tumors. "It's a fortress," concluded Commander Neth. "Even with our combined fleets, a direct assault would be suicide." General Ryu Hayan stood at the back of the room, quietly reviewing the tactical data. The human commander had been studying intelligence reports for 3 days, saying little but asking detailed questions about Vorthak biology and planetary defenses. "General," Admiral Kale addressed her, "do you see any possibility of a successful attack?" "Yes," she replied simply, "but not a fleet assault. This requires what we call a decapitation strike. Small force, surgical precision, eliminate. The Queen Mother and the hive mind collapses." "General, the planet is surrounded by thousands of enemy ships," protested Commander Bright Dawn. "How would a small force even reach the surface?" General Ryu activated her own tactical display, showing human stealth ships that looked unlike anything in the Federation fleet. "These are our deep infiltration vessels, designed to avoid detection in hostile territory." "Even if you reach the surface," said the Nexari intelligence officer, "the environment is lethal. Toxic atmosphere, crushing gravity, predatory bioforms, engineered specifically to kill intruders." Dr. Yoon Nari, who had been quietly taking notes, looked up. "What kind of toxic atmosphere?" "Sulfur compounds, methane, and various biological toxins. The atmospheric pressure is 3 times Earth standard." "Interesting," Dr. Yoon mused. "What about the predatory life forms?" "Massive creatures with armor-like shells and acid-based attacks. The intelligence suggests they're specifically designed to hunt and kill any non-Vorthak life." General Ryu and Dr. Yoon exchanged glances. "Sounds like a typical Tuesday on Earth," the general said quietly. Admiral Kale stared at the humans. "Are you saying this environment doesn't concern you?" "Admiral," Dr. Yoon explained, "Earth has environments that would kill most galactic species. In minutes. We have deserts with surface temperatures over 60 degrees Celsius, ocean depths with pressure that would crush most ships, and volcanic regions with toxic gases that dissolve organic tissue. We've been training in hostile environments our entire evolutionary history," added General Ryu. "This planet looks challenging, not impossible." "But the defenses," insisted Commander Neth. "Even if you survive the environment, you'll be facing the entire Vorthak military." "Actually," said Sergeant Nam Ji-hoon, who had been invited to the briefing based on his experience with captured Vorthak technology, "their defenses might work against them." He activated a section of the tactical display showing the planet's organic defense networks. "Look at this pattern. All their defenses are designed to stop large fleet actions. They're not prepared for small unit infiltration." "How can you be certain?" asked Admiral Kale. "Because they're a hive mind," explained Dr. Yoon. "They think in terms of mass coordination, not individual initiative. They can't conceive of someone deliberately sneaking into their most protected space." General Ryu nodded. "It's a blind spot. They've never faced enemies who operate as individuals rather than fleets." The Federation delegates looked skeptical. "General," said Ambassador Veleth, "even if you could reach the Queen Mother, She's protected by hundreds of bio-warriors. How would a small team eliminate such a target? We've been studying Vorthak biology, replied Dr. Yoon. The Queen Mother maintains the hive mind through biochemical signals. Disrupt those signals, and the entire network collapses. But approaching her would be suicide, protested Commander Bright Dawn. Sergeant Nam grinned. Ma'am, with respect, everything we do is suicide until we do it successfully. Admiral Kale felt his energy form flicker with concern. How many human soldiers would this mission require? 12, General Ryu replied. 12? To assault the most heavily defended world in Vorthak space? Admiral, large forces get detected. Small forces get overlooked. 12 humans with the E. Right equipment can accomplish what 12,000 might not. What about extraction? Asked Commander Neth. How would your team escape after completing the mission? The uncomfortable silence that followed answered the question. This was intended as a one-way mission. General, Admiral Kale said carefully, are you asking 12 humans to sacrifice their lives for this operation? I'm asking for 12 volunteers, General Ryu corrected. And I'll be leading them personally. Dr. Yoon looked up from her biological analysis. Actually, extraction might be possible. If we time it correctly with a Federation fleet demonstration on the opposite side of the system, we could create enough confusion to mask our escape. But the risks, insisted Valeth. Ambassador, said General Ryu patiently. Every day we wait, the Vorthak grows stronger. Every day we delay, more Federation worlds die. This mission ends the war. Admiral Kyle studied the tactical projections. The plan was insane by Federation standards, but he was learning that human military thinking operated on different principles. What do you need from us? He asked finally. Distraction, replied General Ryu. While we're infiltrating the planet, we need the Federation fleet to threaten their outer defenses. Make them focus on the fleet while we slip past their sensors. And, if the mission fails, then you continue the conventional war while Earth prepares more extreme measures. The room fell quiet. Everyone understood what more extreme measures meant after their conversation about the Geneva Conventions. Very well, Admiral Kale decided. The Federation will provide support for your operation. General Ryu nodded and began issuing orders to her team. Sergeant Nam, prepare infiltration equipment for hostile environment operations. Corporal An, check our biochemical warfare countermeasures. Captain Lee Yuna, coordinate with Federation intelligence for real-time planetary updates. Watching the humans prepare for what seemed like certain death, Admiral Kale realized something profound. These beings didn't just accept risk as part of military operations. They embraced it, calculated it, and used it as a weapon. General, he called as the human officers prepared to leave. Why are you willing to do this? General Ryu paused at the door. Admiral, we've studied the Vorthak extensively. They're not just invaders, they're genocidal. They won't stop until every other species in the galaxy is dead. But surely there are other ways to defeat them. Maybe. But this way, the war ends quickly with minimal casualties for everyone else. Sometimes the shortest path through hell is straight through the middle. As the humans left to prepare for their mission, Admiral Kale was struck by a terrible understanding. These people weren't just brave. They were willing to walk into the mouth of hell itself to protect strangers they'd never met. The galaxy didn't deserve such allies, but apparently it had them anyway. The infiltration team's stealth ship Shadow Walker drifted through the outer atmosphere of Hive Prime like a ghost. General Ryu Heian watched the sensor displays as Vorthak bioships patrolled overhead, their organic hulls pulsing with alien life. "Atmospheric composition is as expected," reported the ship's pilot, Lieutenant Kang Taiho. "Toxic to most species, but manageable with our environmental suits." The team consisted of 12 humans and, surprisingly, 8 volunteers from Federation species. When word of the mission had spread through the fleet, alien soldiers had asked to join, despite knowing the dangers. "General," called Hydros Trooper Fail through the communication system, his aquatic voice filtered through translation software. "My suit is reading atmospheric pressure at 3.2 Earth standard. Is this normal?" Corporal An Minseo checked her readings. "That's within acceptable parameters, Fail. Just remember to breathe slowly and let your suit compensate for the pressure differential." Watching humans casually discuss environmental conditions that would kill most galactic species, the alien volunteers had learned to trust human judgment about what constituted acceptable risk. "Landing zone is clear," reported Sergeant Nam Ji-hoon from the ship's sensor station. "No Vorthak ground forces detected within 2 kilometers of our target coordinates." The team prepared for insertion in the cargo bay. Human soldiers checked weapons and equipment while their alien teammates ran final system diagnostics. The integration was seamless, like they'd been fighting together for years instead of weeks. "Remember," General Ryu addressed the mixed team, "we're not just representing our individual species today. We're representing the idea that different peoples can work together for something greater than themselves." Nexari warrior Crystal Bright chimed softly. "General, my people have a saying. Individual crystals create beautiful music, but harmonic resonance creates power." "That's beautiful," replied Captain Lee Yuna. "We have a similar concept. No one fights alone." The landing was smooth, despite the hostile environment. The team moved quickly through landscape that looked like something from a nightmare. Organic structures grew from the ground like twisted trees, while biomechanical defense systems swept the area with sensor beams. "Movement to our east," reported Luminari Scout Soft Glow, her energy form barely visible in the toxic atmosphere. "3 Vorthak bio-warriors conducting perimeter patrol." "Range?" asked Sergeant Nam. "Approximately 300 meters and closing." The team spread into cover positions among the alien landscape. Human soldiers took point while their Federation allies provided overwatch, their different sensory capabilities complementing human tactics perfectly. "Fail, can you handle the aquatic approach through that stream to the left?" whispered Corporal. On over the comm. The Hydros trooper moved through the toxic water with natural grace. His species' ability to filter chemicals through specialized organs made him ideal for reconnaissance in the polluted environment. "Stream leads to underground tunnels," Fail reported. "Multiple access points to the hive structure." Crystal Bright, "What do your resonance sensors tell you about the tunnel stability?" asked Captain Lee. The Nexari warrior extended crystalline appendages into the ground. "Structure is solid, organic but reinforced with metallic compounds. Safe for passage." The team moved through the tunnels with practiced efficiency. What struck the human soldiers was how naturally their alien teammates had adapted to human small unit tactics. Federation military doctrine emphasized large-scale coordination, but these volunteers had learned to think and act as individuals. "Contact front," called Private Min Seok as Vorthak bio-warriors emerged from side passages. The ensuing firefight lasted only minutes, but it demonstrated something remarkable. Instead of following rigid Federation combat protocols, the alien soldiers had learned to improvise and adapt like humans. Hydros trooper Fael used his natural camouflage abilities to flank enemy positions, while Crystal Bright created harmonic frequencies that disrupted Vorthak communication systems. Soft Glow provided reconnaissance from positions no physical being could reach. "Beautiful work, everyone," General Ryu said as they regrouped after the engagement. "That's what combined arms looks like at the squad level." As they pressed deeper into the hive complex, the team encountered increasingly dangerous obstacles. Toxic gas vents that would dissolve unprotected organic matter. Pressure changes that could rupture most species' circulatory systems. Biomechanical. Traps designed to capture and analyze intruders. But the most dangerous moment came when a structural collapse separated the team. Fael was trapped under debris in a flooding chamber, his environmental suit damaged and leaking. Without hesitation, Corporal An Minseo dove into the toxic water. "Huh? What are you doing?" called General Ryu. "Fael's family, ma'am," An replied as she worked to free the trapped hydros. "Nobody gets left behind." The human medic worked frantically to patch Fael's damaged suit, while water levels rose around them. The toxic chemicals would kill her if her own suit failed, but she never hesitated. "Corporal," Fael said through their private comm channel, "why are you risking your life for me? We've only known each other for weeks." An looked at him through her helmet visor as she sealed the final breach in his suit. "Because that's what family does. And your family now." The rescue took precious time, but the team waited. Even though their mission could save billions of lives, no human would abandon their teammate. "This is why we fight," observed Crystal Bright as they helped. "Fail to higher ground, not just to win, but to prove that some things are more important than victory." "Like what?" asked Soft Glow. "Like each other," replied Captain Lee simply. The team continued toward their objective, but something had changed. The Federation soldiers had started thinking like humans, treating their teammates as family rather than military assets. When they finally reached the Queen Mother's chamber, it was Nexari warrior Crystal Bright who delivered the biochemical weapon that would disrupt the hive mind. But as alarms screamed throughout the complex, it was human planning that got them out alive. "Extraction Point Alpha is compromised," reported Lieutenant Kang from their extraction ship. "Multiple bioships converging on your position." "Switch to Extraction Point Beta," ordered General Ryu. "All teams converge on secondary rally point." But Hydros Trooper Fael was moving slowly, still suffering from his injuries. The toxic environment was wearing down his damaged suit faster than expected. "Leave me," he told Corporal An over their private channel. "Save yourselves." "Not happening," An replied firmly. "Min Seok, help me carry him." "Ma'am," Private Min Seok said to General Ryu, "we're not leaving anyone behind." "Understood. Crystal Bright, can you create a resonance barrier to slow down pursuit?" "Affirmative, General." The retreat became a running battle through the collapsing hive complex. Human soldiers provided covering fire while their alien teammates used their unique abilities to clear obstacles and confuse enemies. They reached the extraction ship with minutes to spare, but it was the alien volunteers who surprised everyone with their final statements. "General," said Crystal Bright as the ship escaped Hive Prime's gravity well, "my people have debated joining your Federation Defense Force permanently." "Same with my clan," added Fael. "We've learned something from humans that our species had forgotten." "What's that?" asked General Ryu. That strength isn't about individual capability, replied Soft Glow. It's about what you're willing to sacrifice for others. As news of the mission's success reached the fleet, Admiral Kale realized that the humans had accomplished something beyond military victory. They had created a new kind of soldier, one that thought beyond species boundaries. "Sir," reported his communications officer, "we're receiving surrender offers from Vorthak commanders throughout their territory. The hive mind collapse is spreading faster than our best projections." But Kale was watching the mixed human-alien teams forming throughout his fleet. Humans had done more than win a war. They had shown the galaxy what was possible when different. Species truly worked together. The Federation had been an alliance of convenience. What was emerging now was something far more powerful, a family. 6 months after the fall of the Vorthak Queen Mother, Admiral Kale stood on the observation deck of the newly commissioned exploration vessel New Horizon. Through the viewport, he could see something that would have been impossible to imagine. A year ago, human and Federation ships working together as if they had been designed by the same species. "Admiral," called Captain John Wanbin from the bridge, "we're receiving final clearance for departure. All departments report ready for our first joint exploration mission." The war was over. The Vorthak swarm had collapsed within weeks of their Queen Mother's death, their hive mind dissolving into individual creatures that were more confused than hostile. Many had actually surrendered, asking for help in learning to think as individuals rather than parts of a collective consciousness. "Permission to come aboard, sir?" The voice belonged to Ambassador Song Minji, the human diplomat who had spent the past months helping to negotiate what historians were already calling the Terra Accords. "Of course, Ambassador. How did the final ratification go?" Song Minji stepped onto the observation deck with a satisfied expression. "Unanimous approval from all Federation member species. The Terra Accords are now galactic law." The Terra Accords had been unlike any treaty in galactic history. Instead of the usual diplomatic language about trade agreements and territorial boundaries, they read more like a family charter. Mutual defense, shared exploration, cultural exchange, and most importantly, what humans called having each other's backs. "The interesting part," continued Ambassador Song, "was that several species requested to include human-style military ethics training in their Defense Force education. Apparently, the Geneva Conventions have become required reading at the Federation Military Academy." Admiral Kale's energy form flickered with amusement. "A year ago, we thought humans were monsters. Now we're studying their restraint as a model for civilization." Through the viewport, they could see the New Horizons crew preparing for departure. The bridge crew was a perfect example of the new galactic reality, Captain Jeon commanding, with Nexari navigator Crystal Song providing stellar cartography, Hydros engineer Deep Current managing the ship's biological systems, and Luminary communications, Officer Bright Voice coordinating with Fleet Command. But the most remarkable sight was in the cargo bay, where former Vorthak drones worked alongside humans and Federation personnel. Dr. Yoon Nari had discovered that exposure to human individualism had triggered something in Vorthak biology, awakening personal consciousness in creatures that had never experienced independent thought. "Dr. Yoon," Admiral Kale called to the human scientist as she passed through the observation area, "how are our former enemies adapting to individual consciousness?" "Remarkably well," she replied, pausing to join the conversation. "They're like children learning to think for themselves for the first time. Former drone designation Hive 77 has chosen the name Questions because that's all he does now." "Questions?" asked Ambassador Song. He discovered curiosity, Dr. Yoon explained with a smile. Yesterday, he asked me why humans cry when they're happy. It took 3 hours to explain emotional complexity to someone who's never felt individual. Emotions before. Captain Jeon's voice came over the ship's communication system. All hands, prepare for departure. Our mission is to explore the outer veil, searching for signs of intelligent life and establishing diplomatic contact with any species we encounter. It was a mission that would have been unthinkable during the war. Instead of preparing for battle, they were preparing for friendship. The ship's crew included diplomats, scientists, cultural specialists, and yes, military personnel, but focused on protection rather than conquest. Admiral, said Ambassador Song, there's something else. Earth has received over 300 requests from Federation species asking to establish colonies in human space. Colonies? Admiral Kyle was surprised. Why would other species want to live on death worlds? Because humans have proven that death worlds make you stronger, Dr. Yoon answered. Several species believe that their children should grow up in challenging environments, learning to think like humans. The concept was revolutionary. For thousands of years, galactic civilization had sought comfort and safety. Now, entire species were requesting to raise their young in the dangerous environments that had forged humanity. There's more, continued Ambassador Song. The Zentari have requested human military advisors to help them develop what they're calling aggressive diplomacy. Apparently, they want to learn how to negotiate from a position of strength. As the New Horizon prepared to depart, Admiral Kale reflected on how completely the galaxy had changed. The Federation had evolved from a loose alliance of convenience into something resembling a genuine family, with humans as the protective. Older siblings everyone looked up to. Ship's AI coming online, announced Captain John. Final systems check complete. The artificial intelligence that ran the ship's basic functions had been programmed with an unusual philosophy for a machine: human ethics and emotional reasoning. It had been Dr. Shin Yunji's idea to create AIs that could understand concepts like sacrifice, loyalty, and love. "Good morning, crew," came the AI's voice, speaking in warm, friendly tones. "I'm honored to serve aboard this vessel. Today marks the beginning of our exploration mission, and I want you all to know that your safety and success are my primary concerns." "Ship," called Nexari Navigator Crystal Song, "what's our estimated travel time to the outer veil?" "Approximately 14 standard days," Navigator Song. "I've planned several course corrections to avoid gravitational anomalies, and I've prepared educational materials about potential species we might encounter." "Educational materials?" asked Hydros Engineer Deep Current. "Cultural briefings, communication protocols, and most importantly, guidance on making friends with strangers. After all, that's what humans do best." Admiral Kale smiled at the AI's observation. It was true. Humans had entered galactic civilization, not as conquerors or traders, but as friends. They fought when necessary, but they preferred to adopt strangers into their extended family. "Departure in 30 seconds, announced Captain Jeon. "All hands, prepare for hyperspace transition." As the ship jumped to faster-than-light travel, Admiral Kale found himself thinking about the future. For the first time in galactic history, multiple species were actively working together not out of necessity, but out of genuine affection for each other. "Admiral," said Ambassador Song, "what do you think we'll find out there?" "Hopefully more friends," he replied. "The galaxy is a big place, and if humans have taught us anything, it's that there's always room for more family." The New Horizon. streaked through hyperspace toward unknown regions, carrying with it the hopes and dreams of an entire galactic civilization. But more than that, it carried something humans had given to the galaxy, the idea that strangers were just friends you hadn't met yet. In the ship's computer core, the AI processed millions of calculations per second while pondering a simple human concept that had become central to its programming. The final entry in the ship's log read, "Diplomatic Log, Day 1. Today we learned that the most dangerous predator in the galaxy isn't humanity's capacity for violence. It's their capacity for love. And now, thanks to them, we're all learning to be dangerous in the same way." The war was over. The real adventure was just beginning. The galaxy had called for reinforcements and received something far better. A family willing to fight for each other, explore together, and face whatever challenges the universe might offer with the unshakable confidence that no one would ever have to face them alone. In the end, that was the most human thing of all.